Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula believes that corruption at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa is deeply entrenched. In fact, he says investigative processes such as the Commission of Inquiry that was recommended by the Zondo Commission would not effectively deal with the looters at the agency. Prasa has lost millions of rand in irregular contracts recently. However, its leadership say they're determined to fight corruption. Let's get you more on this now, bringing the acting CEO, David Mphelo, who joins us now in our studios here in Randburg. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Thank you so much for making the journey to speak to us. We are spoiled for choice about which of the issues at Prasa to begin with, but perhaps we should reflect on the sentiments expressed by the minister who was speaking at an oversight visit earlier this week. In fact, you were there yourself, and I'm sure you have had some time to think about what he said. But in case you missed it, let's take you back to that moment. Take a listen to what Fikile Mbalula had to say about corruption at Prasa earlier this week.
Comment a commission of inquiry. Prasa doesn't need a commission of inquiry. It needs total focus, integrated investigation and arrest of thieves. That's what it needs. You're going to have a commission of inquiry, spend billions of rands on it, you leave thieves here. Monies of the state have been embezzled here. Zondo Commission itself has got prima facie. So what we need here, we need prosecution, something like an infusion house when we're investigating PPEs. That's what we need here. Commission to do what?
The minister didn't stop there. He's also called on government to intensify its efforts to fight corruption at Prasa. Take a listen to that moment.
Corruption is not going to end with this report. It's every day here. Corruption. It's every day here at Prasa. Actually, here at Prasa, that's where hawks and everybody should be camping. Yes, they should be camping. Where there is money, exchanging hands, they should be camping here. And some of them should even be employed inside here, pretending to be working. Can't they are looking after thieves here? You know. That's what they should be doing here. This place is open for corruption now and in the future. So our corruption measures must be intensified.
All right. This place is open for corruption. Those are the words from the minister. Again, you were there. Do you agree with him?
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers. Yes, I agree. But the work to deal with that, the cleanup process has started. When the president did the proclamation for SIU to look at the derailed report and the matters associated with that, that was the starting of the process. They're looking into that as we speak. I'm anticipating that they'll finish the report and take it to the president very soon. But within that process, they've already done referrals to the Hawks and in certain cases to the NPA. We also have got referrals to our side for consequence management and disciplinary actions to be taken. 5 of those matters that were referred to us have been dealt with. We've dismissed 4 people already based on the proclamation. And I'm anticipating that out of that, there'll be a lot more.
What are those people dismissed for? Sorry to interrupt you there.
So there were a number of cases within the derailed report that were investigated. Others were in the security space, travel management system, the Werkman's scenario that's been spoken about, and all the other tenders and contracts that were in there that were highlighted by the then public protector. So those were highlighted, and out of that investigation that the SIU did, that's where those referrals come from. But there's also a secondment that has now created a partnership between ourselves and the SIU to look in particular at three areas. One is the issues and the matters highlighted by the AG, all the irregularities, and the other one is the Werkman's report itself that we need to look into and all its matters.
Yeah.
The SIU to date has dealt with the irregularities. There were 44 cases and 44 individuals implicated in that. 11 of those have since left the organization. We're dealing with 33. Out of the 33 that I'm referring to, 19 cases have been concluded in there. When I say concluded, I must clarify, because the last time I said that, the question was, what do you mean they were closed or they completed? So there are warning letters issued, there are dismissals in that process, and also there are those that have been through the process and not found guilty. We're still dealing with around 14. They're still going through the disciplinary processes. Unfortunately, I can't say where they are, just to keep the process clean and also not mention the names. But we're going through that, and I'm anticipating that we're going to finish those very soon.
The impression created by the minister is one that suggests to us that it feels like not much else can be done without any kind of external intervention to try help curb, turn the tide on corruption within Prasa. For those of us who aren't necessarily following the details around procurement, what is it specifically about those processes at Prasa that are so vulnerable and open to things like corruption, given the picture that the minister painted?
Look, I think the people that have been managing the policy over time found gaps in terms of manipulating the policies and do things wrong. So one of the things that we've had to do was to go and review that policy. And so the current supply chain policy has been approved. It's new. Obviously, it can't be bulletproof. We're going to continue looking at that. But there are other things that we're introducing parallel to that. One, the code of ethics needs to go parallel with that policy, so that should there be any deviation or non-adherence to that, we then deal with the individuals or even look into the gaps thereof.
So this didn't exist prior to this particular intervention?
We're introducing it now. The other part is we need to start vetting the people that we're putting into these committees. So that we're going to introduce as well. Somebody made an example and said, if you put somebody who's struggling with a bond to go and manage a huge tender, what do you think is going to happen? They become a target for manipulation, right? And it's a lot easier to corrupt them. That was an example that somebody made a comment on. And it's those kind of things that we believe, if you pick them up during vetting, you can avoid any temptations to be caught on the wrong things.
Sure. There's also been a lot of focus around infrastructure for Prasa, and that's because so much of it has dilapidated to a point where we're wondering where on earth one begins. Help us place into context just how much you've lost over the past 2 years, especially during COVID, when one, there wasn't a presence of security at some of your stations, and two, there weren't people moving around on the trains themselves, and that also opens you up to criminality.
Maybe just to step back a bit. Cable theft and vandalism did not start during COVID.
Yeah.
There was theft and vandalism before that. Yes, it was amplified during lockdown. I think when the service is not running, when trains are not running, the network is vulnerable. We are estimating just over 4 billion rands of impact from a rand value on the infrastructure. That's how much we've lost. We shut down the network the first time after 40 years of running. You can imagine what that's going to do. So it's not as easy as switching on the switch and expecting that we will recover and we will resume. When we went back and assessed the damage, in certain cases the rail itself did not exist, taken out. But majority is on the cable side and the electrical side that's been taken out. On the station side, we've got a total of around 479 stations. 115 require major revitalization. In certain cases, we've had to take the buildings down because they're so dilapidated you can't even rebuild on top of them. So we're looking at that, and we're bringing in newer ways, faster ways to bring the stations up. I did say yesterday in one of the interviews that we're introducing things like containers as a rapid way of bringing the stations back. But we're also using a corridor approach. We're taking one corridor at a time. I think this year we have identified the high-volume corridors, 10 of those, and 5 of those are already running. So we left in this year out of what we identified with the next 5.
Yeah. We'll speak about the corridors in just a moment because there's 40 in total, and I imagine at some stage you want to get all of them running again. But I just wanted to, while we speak about infrastructure and security, touch on the Siangena technology saga, right? It's a matter that landed up in court, contracts apparently that were irregularly extended. In other words, the company had a certain time to provide security services. That time lapsed, but the contract was still extended. I wonder to what extent that left you vulnerable, as you tell us how these contracts, by the way, were extended when apparently they shouldn't have been.
Well, that's part of the irregularity, right? and somebody did that, and somebody has been taken to book for that. As a city, I think 3 individuals were taken through the processes because of that. There's been dismissals, and others resigned in the middle of that. But I guess the question is that when somebody has committed such a huge criminal act or fraudulent act, should they just be left to resign, get out of the organization, and nothing happens to them?
Exactly.
The law is following that, and we leave that to the law to follow that. And I think that the hawks are on top of that.
Was Prasa getting security for that contract?
That was meant to give us the speed gates, by the way, the Siangana. It was not for security. That was for the speed gates, the access points. So that infrastructure has been put in place, some of which today has been vandalized, completely taken out during lockdown as well. So if we start, or should we start, we'll have to start from zero in certain cases. And a little bit of that exists there and there.
Sure.
So it's part of something that we'll need to redo as we go.
Paying twice, essentially, for the same thing because of the damage that's been caused.
Yes.
All right. Let's speak about the corridors now. I did mention that there's 14 total. You've identified 10 as a priority in your attempts to get back to where you're hoping to get back to. How much time do you think you need to get all 40 back? It's obviously something you're not going to be able to achieve just this year.
Okay. If I just look at the pace we've taken, we should have. We late in this 10 that we're talking about, we should have opened them in the last year. But here we are. And I can say we are going to get them, this 10 going in this year. But we're not leaving it there. We already identified the next 10. We're preparing and assessing exactly what we need to do. We're getting the processes underway, including procurement, to make sure that when we start in the new year, maybe even before when we start with the new fiscus, we have started the process of identifying the service providers, getting them on site, and identifying exactly what other pillars of the project need to be done. For instance, substations, we know they take longer to fix because of the imports of transformers. So that we'll have to prepare way ahead to get to the 10 in the next year. We're already putting a plan. We have a plan for the next 40 that says what is the next 10, what's the low-hanging fruits, what are the easier ones that need to plug in. But I think the backbone and the foundation of that is that we need to get the major ones like Mabopane, Mamelodi, Pretoria to Joburg, Soweto, then the other small little ones that branch off the major ones. In KZN is the Kwamashu to Mlazi, and the rest of the others plug into that.
All right.
In Cape Town is the central line, and then the smaller ones plug into that.
And I understand you're actually in Cape Town. I think it's sometime next week. Very quickly, a few seconds left. For the passengers who feel like they've lost trust in Prasa, you obviously need them back, at the very least, for revenue collection. What message, as the acting CEO, do you have for those people who are watching this infrastructure and feel quite vulnerable, quite frankly, to criminals themselves?
3 things I'll say to our commuters. 1, we've got to acknowledge the fact that over time we failed them, and that we apologize for. 2, to appeal for patience, because we're hard at work to recover that. Very soon, out of the patience, they're going to enjoy the new services. As you can see, what's happening down in the southern line, where we've introduced the new trains. Mabopane, we've introduced the new trains. Salisbury, we've introduced the new trains. And people in those areas and communities in those areas are enjoying those services to a point where they're vouching that whoever attempts to vandalize, they'll deal with them first. So I'm inviting communities to be patient, 1, and 2, to look after this infrastructure as we deploy it.
We're desperate for Prasa to work, at the very least for economic growth in places where the rail is running. Thanks very much indeed for your time. I think it's important to clarify some of those issues as we've tried during our discussion to try chart a way forward. The acting CEO of Prasa is David Mphelo. Once again, thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.